good, ladies and gents? Welcome to the MKO Pugilism Boxing channel where we talk all things boxing. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, put it on all so you get notified straight away as soon as any new content drops on the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. So I just got through watching Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall. This was for the undisputed title at super lightweight, 140 pounds. Josh Taylor had all the belts, and going into this fight, I thought that Josh Taylor would just be too much for Jack Catterall. I thought, he's levels above where he is, so it was pretty much a foregone conclusion where there might be a few issues here and there. But anyway, just run you through how I saw the fight, how it went. So first round came out, and that first round, I would say, as the bell rung, it just sort of set the tone. Jack Catterall, it was a quiet round, but Jack Catterall certainly had, for me at least, for the kind of better first round. He got off with a few shots. He was more relaxed. He settled into the fight straight away, in his own pace, and he had the sort of timing down. Taylor seemed to struggle in the first round to sort of settle into the fight, whereas Jack Catterall, he was a lot cleaner, a lot smoother in that, and he's just settled into the fight a bit better. Second round, Taylor sort of came into it a little bit more. He got told off by the referee. I think it was for a bit of roughhouse tactics, because these guys came together a fair bit during this fight. So I think it was because of that bit of sort of roughhouse tactics. And he had a bit of good success in there, Josh Taylor. He managed to sort of hurt Jack Catterall towards the end of the second, towards the last, I think it was the last few seconds. There was a bit of action there. Josh Taylor managed to sort of hurt Jack Catterall, and it seemed there was a bit of a momentum shift where Taylor might be able to get into this fight a bit more. But again, as we went into the third, Jack Catterall again sort of took over. He showed that, look, he's settling into the fight a bit better. He was doing a bit better than Taylor, I'd say, in the third round. He was able to sort of land some good power shots, catch. Although Taylor sort of came in, did land a few combinations, it was still not that much. He was still being hindered by the good defense of Jack Catterall. So even though Taylor was sort of coming into it a little bit more, as he was trying to come in and attack, he would have to eat shots. He'd have to eat these counters and little combinations from Jack Catterall on the way in. So Jack Catterall was although Taylor came forward, Catterall was always scoring as he came on the way in. So he was sort of making the fight his own and sort of winning the round by doing that, just catching Taylor like that. Fourth round, I would say pretty close. Taylor was coming forward, trying to push the pace of the fight, but he was always taking, again, these eye-catching counters from Jack Catterall, and this tended to be the pattern throughout the fight. Taylor would sort of come forward and try to push the pace, but not be able to land much, and always be having to take these shots from Catterall, and a lot of these shots, they were sort of eye-catching shots, and as I say, Jack Catterall, in specifically the fourth round, I can recall, he kind of upped his work rate a little bit, began to, instead of ones and twos, started throwing threes and fours, started throwing a few more sort of combinations. So it upped his work rate a bit and upped the pace of the fight a bit through good combinations. And I noticed he was throwing some good shots to the body, Jack Catterall, as we went into the fourth. So he's doing very well in that first third of the fight. Again, the fifth round, we saw good shoulder roll from Jack Catterall. He uses this sort of side-on thing that Mayweather used to do and Mayweather's dad used to do. That was very good and very effective throughout this fight. And he managed to sort of mark up Josh Taylor by this point. Josh Taylor got cuts on his eyes, and that's some of the problems, fragile skin. And Josh Taylor, towards this sort of midpoint of the fight, fifth round and that, he was really struggling still to get to grips with this fight, struggling to land any clean shots. And he began to, one of the first signs of him losing his fight was that he he sort of struggled and was looking at the ref and sort of complaining to the ref at some point in the fifth. And by this point in the fifth, I think myself, commentators, and everyone saw this is a big uphill battle for Josh Taylor, as we're getting towards the midpoint now. He still wasn't really into the fight, still wasn't really able to gather momentum and really get his shots off. He was still struggling and eating the counters on his way in. So at that point, I wrote in my notes that, you know, he's behind on the cards here. He needs something. He needs to do something to sort of change the momentum as he's behind on the cards. He needs to do something a bit special. And you know, as the fight wore on to the middle stages, there was some good, brilliant 1-2s from Jack Catterall. Their 1-2s were very effective, and you know, it was so accurate with them, so sharp with the 1-2s, and he would always be landing these repeatedly. It seemed like Josh Taylor didn't really have an answer to it. And you know, he was sort of completely outboxing Josh Taylor by this point, by the middle point. And this was impressive because it showed that the crowd didn't get to Jack Catterall, because obviously it's in Scotland, it's a pro Josh Taylor crowd and everything, and you know, Jack Catterall didn't let any of that get to him, and he was just outboxing Josh Taylor very impressively, even in his hometown, in the Hydro Arena in Scotland. So yeah, as I say, by the mid stages, even the punch numbers, the punch stats showed what they showed on Sky, is that Josh Taylor was basically only landing half the punches that Jack Catterall did. And when Jack Catterall landed, it wasn't pity-pat, he was picking the shots well and landing them well. So you know, Josh Taylor was being outboxed, outpunched, and he was being outlanded by Jack Catterall, even by that middle stage. And then by that point, I was in my notes, I was putting, you know, this is Jack Catterall's fight to lose by this stage, by the sort of 7th round or so. And Catterall has another breakthrough, another very good round in round 8, where he manages to catch Josh Taylor with good few, I think it was 2 left hands. He puts Josh Taylor down, which again, for me, by this point, he's in such a more or less an unassailable lead here. 8th round, gets that nice knockdown on Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor seemed a bit hurt by it, and by that point, at least from the way I was sort of looking at the fight, Josh Taylor, he needed some knockdowns by this point. He needed at least 1 knockdown or something like that, or probably a stoppage. And Catterall, you know, he hurt Taylor again in that round with a few 2 left hands towards the end of the 8th. And it looked like Josh Taylor, you know, was feeling the pressure, but Josh Taylor did come roaring back and showed the heart of a lion, came back and tried to put it on Jack Catterall. But again, I don't think that was enough to win it. Taylor in the 9th round, because I believe Taylor knew that he was behind, he come back and he was trying to sort of stick it on Jack Catterall, but Ben Davison said, look, you know, you've got to stick it on him now, you've got to step to him now, you've got to step it up now, you've got to take the fight to him. And you know, in the 9th round, Taylor sort of began to stalk Jack Catterall, kept going after him. You know, he kept going after him, but the problem he was having again was that the defense of Jack Catterall in that 9th, that shoulder roll that he uses, it was just a bit too good. And defensively, as much as Taylor went after Jack Catterall, the defense was just too tight and just basically too good, and it seemed like Taylor could only get through with about 1 shot, and then by the time he's got through with that 1 shot, Catterall was either leaned in towards him, or he's moved away, or he's swayed away somewhere so that Taylor couldn't land anymore. So that was a good thing, and that was one of the brilliant things. I think Josh Taylor came into it quite good in a scrappy 10th round, and you know, there was a point deduction in the 10th round which sort of swayed at least that round in Josh Taylor's favour. It was scrappy overall, but with the point deduction, I suppose you can sort of give that to Taylor. And as I've said previously, you know, one of the best things, we saw great examples of this in the round 11 towards the championship, where Jack Catterall was again using a shoulder roll, being slick, avoiding Josh Taylor's punches, and you know, if Josh Taylor did land, it was only the one shot he would land, and then Jack Catterall would be out of the way. He'd make him miss, or he'd hold him, or he'd make sure he can't hit him again. And in the 11th, it really sort of put the nail in the coffin, for me at least, on my sort of cardinal way I was scoring it for Josh Taylor. As Josh Taylor got a point taken off, he walked back to his corner and he was dragged by the referee to the middle of the ring to then take off a point. So to myself and anybody watching objectively, it seemed as if, well, this is it for Josh Taylor. He's got a point taken off. He needs a knockout to win. But again, as we got into the last round, championship round, 12th round, Catterall again outboxed Josh Taylor. He showed an incredible smoothness, and he was just so defensively sound and defensively intelligent. And you know, the counter punching was just coming off in the 12th round. He just completely outboxed Josh Taylor, completely outlanded him and outfought him. And as we came to the end of this 12th round, I was, you know, very impressed with Jack Catterall. And again, Josh Taylor, the story of this fight was he just couldn't get it going. But here again, you know, and another thing I will say was impressive about Jack Catterall that he done in this fight was that throughout this fight, Jack Catterall always had energy in the tank, and I would say that he really made this fight his own, and he sort of fought at his own pace. He didn't allow Taylor to dictate the pace. Even when Taylor was coming after him, attacking him, he never seemed out of breath. He never seemed out of his element. He fought at his own pace, countered and outlanded, and, you know, done everything you need to do apart from knocking someone out to win the fight. So for me, it was almost a foregone conclusion. Only to come to find out when the scorecards were read, David was scored 114-111 to Josh Taylor, and 113-112 to Josh Taylor on another card. And then the other card was 113-112 to Jack Catterall. Now, to me and even the Sky team that I was watching, they were talking to Ben Shalom, who's the new promoter in Sky, Adam Smith, Johnny Nelson. Everyone was talking about this because to me, this was a clear case of a robbery, clear-cut robbery, because at the end of the day, first of all, it wasn't really a close fight at all. It wasn't a close fight at all. It was a fight where there was clearly one winner. Josh Taylor wasn't really able to get off and get shots going and get his work flowing, so there's no way you can say that he won the fight by one round. No way you can say that at all, unless you're scoring based on crowd reaction or something like that. So yeah, the scorecards of this were discussed, and it was definitely a robbery. The 114-111 card, I mean, I don't know how on earth you get that. That was just terrible. There's no way it was 114-111 to Taylor. If it was 114-111 to anybody, you could have done that to Jack Catterall, because, you know, Catterall wanted that clearly, but you know, these cards were just terrible. Because I think even the one that went to Catterall, you know, by one round, yeah, that's a joke. There's no way you won it by just one round. Catterall, you know, you watch that fight, you watch it and look at it objectively. Catterall won it by several rounds. So that's my thoughts on it. It's definitely a robbery, and I think it's a sad thing for boxing. It is a black eye for boxing, because, you know, you got kids that work all their lives and they work to get these opportunities to win a world title. It shouldn't matter where the world title is. It shouldn't matter that Josh Taylor is Scottish and this happened in Scotland. Shouldn't matter if you fight an American in America. Shouldn't matter if you fight someone from London in London, or whatever it is. That sort of stuff shouldn't matter. The judging should be correct, and the judging should be objective, and it should be accurate. But here again, we have another example of bad judgment, and it takes away an undisputed title in this case from a formerly undefeated guy who now has to live with this loss and may never get the chance to avenge this and get, you know, who knows whether Catterall gets a chance to fight for undisputed again. You know, who knows. And one thing he can take as a positive, though, although it was a robbery, is that he does belong at this level. he does belong at this level, at the top elite level. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on this. And until next time, it's MKO Pugilism, over and out.